And they apparently are now hit the campaign trail today, Katie.
Just a few facts about John Edwards, Andrea. He graduated with high honors from NC State, North Carolina State in 1974. He is the first person in his family to attend college. He's earned a law degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, became a very successful trial attorney in North Carolina. He was reared by working-class parents in the mill towns of the Carolinas and was the first, as I mentioned, in his family to go to college, and he often emphasizes his working-class roots. But what he really brings to the table, Andrea, he is a terrific campaigner, and that's certainly something that John Kerry recognized.
Exactly. He's got a lot of sizzle. He's got pizzazz. He is very good as a vote getter. He certainly was the second-place finisher, at least in the primary campaigns, only winning South Carolina, the state of his birth, but certainly showing that he was very good out on the campaign trail. And he has campaigned rather actively for this place on the ticket. But that said, there are pros and cons. As a trial lawyer, he will draw a lot of fire from the Republicans, who have been talking a lot about tort reform and are very much in the corporate world against trial lawyers. But at the same time, he's a good closer. He knows how to talk to a jury. He made millions as a trial lawyer. And as you say, he's very good out on the stump.
All right, Andrea Mitchell in Washington, D.C. Andrea, thanks so much.
Thank you.
NBC's Tim Russert is joining us now from Massachusetts with more on this election. Tim, you like to talk about red and blue states all the time. So what does a Kerry Edwards team do in terms of those red and blue states, in particular the states that can go either way?
You know, Matt, the bottom line is Democrats don't know. They do not believe that Senator Kerry can bring North Carolina, his home state, but they point to 2000 when Bill Clinton picked Al Gore at neighboring Tennessee and said perhaps Edwards can't bring a state, but he can generate a level of enthusiasm and motivation, and what we need is turnout. If we can get Democrats and weak Democrats, leaning Democrats, that turn out in those battleground states, and if they're excited by John Edwards, we can win this election.
And do you think in some ways by choosing John Edwards, John Kerry is admitting that he is lacking a fire or an ability to I guess, engage the electorate?
I spoke to someone who actually had this conversation with John Kerry, who was urging him to pick John Edwards and said, John Kerry, you need this level of excitement. And Kerry said, well, I'm exciting, and then burst out laughing, saying, I know what you mean. But it took a while to get here, Matt. Someone very close to John Kerry told me on Saturday that he was 95% there. He really had to work to get to a point where he felt comfortable with John Edwards. Remember that campaign, Matt, when John Edwards said, not so fast, John Kerry? There were some pretty heated exchanges. But the one thing that I keep hearing from a lot of Kerry people, Matt, is they look forward to the debate between John Edwards and Dick Cheney. They fully expect the Republicans to go after John Edwards very strongly about no defense experience, but they have great confidence in Edwards' ability to debate as a trial lawyer.
Okay, Tim, thanks.
And that ends our special report coverage. For those of you on the East Coast, you'll rejoin the Today Show momentarily. Alrighty.
It's been a
speech that you will hear from John Edwards. He talked throughout his campaign for president about two Americas, the haves and the have-nots. He believes that he is a politician for every man. Now, some people will tell you that's very interesting for someone who's worth upwards of $50 million by some estimates, but he is a self-made man. His personal story is really extraordinary. First person ever in his family to graduate college. He is the son of a
leaders and rank and file alike. So again, to recap, informed sources telling my colleague Carl Cameron that John Edwards will be the pick. Of course, he is the first-term senator from North Carolina.
Again, with great emotion, we have heard John Edwards talk about that on the campaign trail. He obviously also is a good-looking guy, very telegenic. In 2000, People magazine named him the most sexy politician in America, and the New York Times once called him the next Bill Clinton. He does have an extraordinarily good story. a warm and wonderful family life with his wife Elizabeth. He cut short a family vacation in Florida at Disney World, in fact, and had this supposedly secret meeting a few nights ago with John Kerry, where apparently this deal was all put together. He has a moderate to conservative voting record. That will sort of moderate what many people say is the extreme liberal voting record of John Kerry. And they do have one thing in common. They're both pretty extraordinary athletes. We've seen a lot of pictures of John Kerry doing things like playing hockey and out on the water. We're told that Senator Edwards has actually climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. He did it with one of his sons, and he has run 5 marathons. Now he has the marathon of the next 4 months of his campaign to go. Contessa?
No doubt that will leave him winded and breathless, just like real marathons do. You know, Chris, you pointed out the differences between Senator Kerry and Senator Edwards, and John Edwards even has said himself during his own campaign for president that Kerry is a good candidate, he'd make a good president, and I'd be the first to say that, but we come from different places and we present different choices. One of the things that has really become an issue in this campaign already is that the vice presidential candidate or running mate, whether or not they would be able to carry their home state. How is that expected to play out for North Carolina?
Well, that's very interesting, because a lot of political analysts will tell you it is not a guarantee, and it may not even be likely that John Edwards will carry his home state of North Carolina. On the other hand, his aides will tell you he's defied expectations before. He defeated an incumbent Republican, Lodge Faircloth, when he ran with no political experience. And so he believes that he can carry North Carolina. That remains to be seen. It is likely that he could appeal to a lot of Southern voters, and there are Democratic strategists who think he can also help in a lot of close races, if for no other reason that he has become a pretty prolific fundraiser, and he has been out raising money for John Kerry, and some of the people who raised money for him were immediately put to work with the Kerry campaign. Contessa?
Chris, we see the bigger crowd gathered behind you than we saw a little bit earlier. When is this shindig expected to get started?
Well, we're about, I guess, an hour and 20 minutes away. This is a ticket-only event, but people could just go on to the website and get tickets for this event. What we don't know, here's the great unknown, is will the VP candidate be here with him? The early indications have been that he will not. There is a campaign team that's been put together for the vice president. His chief of staff will be a former chief of staff of a Mickey Cantor, who of course was a commerce secretary under Bill Clinton. So he's got a team in place, but even that team didn't know who the selection was going to be. All they knew was that they were going to be meeting with the vice presidential pick probably sometime today. It's likely at some point, probably before the nightly news, because this is a very well orchestrated event, that we will get a picture of them, because they're going to want that picture with their hands raised in the sky as a team.
He loves being around people. I mean, they reach out to him. He really has an ability to energize, I think, what's already a very energized Democratic Party, and across the base, African American